Welcome to the Dark Stream, VoxDay, voxday.net, and unauthorized.tv. Thanks for tuning in. Sorry about that delay. I was I was in the wrong window. So Owen is out of the picture tonight, so I just thought I would stream on my own, keep things rolling here at Unauthorized, and I'm sure we'll be back doing the Big Bear and Dark Lord show next week. We've had some big announcements this weekend, and the announcement of the shock 39% tariff on Castalia Library, or on goods from Switzerland, made us take a good hard look at the cost structure of the Castalia Library, Castalia History, and so forth books. And we quickly concluded that even if we don't have to pay the tariff, which we shouldn't have to, we needed to do something. I didn't realize until we sat down and ran the numbers quite how bad it had gotten. But basically our print costs have gone up 19% since we started. And our cost of binding a book in the US has gone up 32% for library and way more for libraria. But that's just because of gold prices. So anyhow, when we looked at that, we're just like, okay, this is not good. we can't do this. So what we did was extend the schedule, and this should take care of our needs to mess around with the cost structure, the price structure, for some time, hopefully another 5 years. We'll see. But the upshot is we're going to be able to dig into our backlog, get caught up, not lose money on the books, etc., etc. And we don't have to increase prices to our customers at all, to our subscribers at all. When you consider the fact that we're delivering essentially a similar book, maybe slightly better quality, to subscribers for $100 that people are paying, or actually now with the additional one, it'll be $150 compared to what Easton is selling for $468. It looks like a pretty good deal. So anyhow, so that's taken care of. We took a poll. Over 80% of the subscribers supported that path rather than raising prices, and I think it's a good solution for an unavoidable scenario. So that's what's going on. Speaking of books, and the topic that I'm going to address, which is evolution, I thought that this might be of some interest to some of you. These are the leather stampings for Hans Schanz's Wise at Heart, or Wise of Heart. And we'll be casing them in tomorrow. We'll be getting pictures out of the finished books soon. But I have to say that looks, the stamping is excellent. And that's one area where I think that we're really going to excel, where the bindery is really going to excel over what we've seen in the past. So anyhow, you guys are familiar, of course, with the mathematical impossibility of the theory of evolution by natural selection, or MITTENS as it's known. And today we were privileged to have a critique of it provided by somebody who I really respect, Dennis McCarthy. And Dennis McCarthy is the gentleman who is responsible for identifying the correct author of the Shakespearean plays. And he presents a very, very convincing, very, very conclusive case that what we know as the great plays written by Shakespeare were actually written by Lord Thomas North. And ironically, the lesser plays that have been popularly regarded as frauds are the actual plays written by the actual William Shakespeare, who was a member of the acting troupe and so forth. I'm not going to bore you with the details, but the case is very, very strong. So I thought it was interesting. He put up a post today on his Substack that I read, and he was talking a lot about evolution and how evolution is inevitable and it's very significant and all this sort of thing. And he took some shots along the way at Paley's blind watchmaker, which is understandable because, as I keep trying to tell some of my fellow evolutionary skeptics, the fact that you're right to doubt something does not mean that the basis for your doubt is a convincing case, much less a conclusive one. And when you're saying, well, it's impossible for a watch to evolve because the various pieces are required, blah, blah, blah. That's a logical argument. That's not going to convince anybody who is not primarily logic driven. If you're going to prove something conclusively, you have to do more than appeal to incredulity. Because that's really all it is, well, that I can't imagine that. Well, maybe somebody else can. Either way, most of as I've said many times, most of the intelligent design arguments are fundamentally correct. They have to be correct because evolution's impossible. But they're not conclusive, and they're not necessarily convincing. That's why people have banged their heads for so many years without making any popular headway, because the cases that they're presenting are not conclusive. And that's the difference between Mittens and everything else, and that's the reason that people react strongly to it and then run away from it, because you can't argue with it very effectively. You have to be fundamentally unable to do math or unaware of the math involved to even try to critique it, as is the case here. Now remember, Dennis McCarthy's a smart guy. He's an iconoclast. I personally think that he is probably going to not only come around to the anti-evolution side, I think that he's probably going to come up with some really good stuff that I never would, just because of how he thinks. Anyhow, he says, while I like iconoclasts, this one's wrong. Domesticated dogs, Canis familiaris, evolved from gray wolves in less than 20,000 years and likely much faster. This is a crystal clear counterexample to Mittens. Specifically, more than 400 dog breeds have been created with massive morphological and behavioral differences: size, skull shape, coat, intelligence, sociability. Yes, the changes were driven by human-imposed artificial selection, but that is just a special case of natural selection, only more intense and targeted. Despite extremely short timescales, huge numbers of heritable genetic traits have been modified and fixed. If Mittens were valid, such explosive change shouldn't be possible, but it is, and it's been documented in real time. Now, that's a good effort. I understand why he thinks that is an effective rebuttal, because he hasn't done the math, and he hasn't actually sat down and truly comprehended the details of Mittens. Most people haven't. Most people, they just hear about it and they're like, yeah, but well, here's an example of something that happened faster, so therefore it's possible. Well, it doesn't work like that. It just doesn't work like that. So can anyone tell me, without going to the blog, where I've already put up a post, can anyone tell me what are the two obvious problems with that critique? What are the two things that prevent that appeal to the domestication of the dog from being a effective counterexample to contradict Mittens? I'll give you a 30 seconds here to, we've got a bit of a lag, so I'll give you 30 seconds here to see if you can pop up an answer or two before I provide you with the actual answer. But it involves understanding what are the actual differences between artificial selection. James says there are still dogs. No, that's not it. So people say, well, artificial selection is just a form of natural selection. So therefore, if there's time for artificial selection, there's time for artificial. No, they didn't change species. No, that's not correct. Taryn gets it. Domesticating dogs artificially constrains the population size, which makes fixing the likely changes possible. Annie also has a good point. I mean, she's kind of hitting a partial point. She says the mutations were driven by human intelligence, not random chance. That's correct. But again, what really matters is time. Time. The two things that matter most when you're talking about evolution by natural selection, the two things that they cannot deal with are, number one, time, and number two, reproductive constraints. The reason that the biologists are completely unaware of this is because they never actually look at real population numbers. Never. It's all hypothetical mathematical models that are not only incorrect, but are absolutely, totally impossible. And so let's talk about Annie's first point, which is correct. What she's really addressing is the first of my 2 points, which is artificial selection does not proceed like natural selection. Natural selection first requires waiting for the mutation to occur. So there's some time right there. Then the mutation has to prove advantageous in terms of fitness. So there's actually a quotient. It's usually represented by an italic S that represents the fitness advantage. And this fitness advantage ranges from 0.01 and then like an absolutely impossibly strong fitness advantage is 0.3. And that's like basically considered, you have to be artificial to even get to that number. But so artificial select, so first of all, wait for the mutation, have it prove advantageous, and then circulate through the entire population naturally. This takes generations. This takes anywhere from dozens of generations to thousands of generations. ChatGPT actually calculated that based on the size of the human population in the year 1 AD, that it would take 15,000 generations. No, I'm sorry, 15,000 years, and however many generations that worked out to be, before the first mutation to appear in 1 AD would fixate in the entire human race. Now, that's one. Taryn is correct. With artificial selection, the advantage is closer to 1.0. Yes, why? Because, number one, actually, Annie, a slight correction. The mutations were not driven by human intelligence. They don't wait for mutations at all. They utilize existing genetics. They take an existing dog that they like the color of the fur, they like the shape of the snout, and they pick that out. So you don't have to wait for mutation to occur. Secondly, the advantage, the fitness advantage, is, like Terrence said, close to 1.0, close to 100%. Why? Because they don't breed anything else. The breeder literally controls which dog is breeding with which. So there's no need for any sort of fitness advantage. It's already there. And then, so that's the first issue, the differences between artificial selection and natural selection. The second one is even more important. The second one is artificial, or domestic breeding, domestic dog breeds are created with a tiny, tiny, naturally impossible population bottleneck. Okay. In fact, one of the things that it says, that ChatGPT said, is that, well, the only way that it would be even possible for a mutation to fixate in the entire human population is if there was a very small population of under 1,000 individuals, and it's actually close to 10 is the possible number. Secondly, there has to be a catastrophe that wipes everything out, wipes everything else out, so there's no competition. In other words, increasing that fitness advantage. And then ideally it said to have just one sire. Only one. Well, guess what? All three of those things, minus the catastrophe, but all three of those factors apply to domesticated breeding. You don't have to wait for the mutation. The advantage is 100%, and the population bottleneck can be as small as 2 animals. When you start breeding a dog, you can start with just 2 animals. And so the fixation is immediate. Whatever genes you have that exist are now fixated, and as long as you don't cross those dogs with anything else, all of the subsequent population are going to have those specific gene patterns fixed. There's no mutation, perfect advantage, perfect fitness advantage, population bottleneck that is so small that the species would go extinct. Any species, in fact, under 10,000 individuals is considered in danger of extinction. That alone, that definition of endangered species is sufficient to completely disprove evolution by natural selection and demonstrate that it never happened, it couldn't happen, there wasn't anywhere nearly enough time for it with any species on the planet. The only species that you could possibly, in theory, maybe make a case for would be the cheetah, because their species had 2 catastrophes, 2 population bottlenecks that got so reduced that somehow the cheetah survived, even though it probably shouldn't have. And that's why cheetahs are so genetically similar to each other that they can actually get skin grafts from one another, which is pretty incredible when you think about it. But even there, I'm willing to bet that despite the 2 population bottlenecks, that's probably not enough to account for the genetic disparity from a pre-cheetah common ancestor with, say, lions or whatever, leopards. There's still probably not enough. The genetic disparity is probably still too great, even with those 2 population bottlenecks. So it's. I think it's really good that intelligent people of a natural skeptical mind are beginning to turn a skeptical eye on Mittens, because that's how it's going to be proved. It's going to be proved when the very best, the very most informed people can't disprove it, can't even criticize it effectively. I personally don't think that it is possible to at this point. That's how confident I am. Especially if you look at the fact that Dennis McCarthy is a smart guy, educated guy, well-read guy, and the best that he could come up with just casually. Now, obviously, he hasn't paid close attention. Maybe he'll be able to come up with a better one. But the fact that his first instinctive, immediate attempt at a critique is so obviously inapplicable and so obviously wrong is another nail in the coffin for the neo-Darwinian theory of evolution by natural selection. So anyhow, does anyone have any questions? Let's see. I've got another at least 15 minutes. So if anyone's got any questions about Castalia Library, if anyone's got any questions about Mittens or evolution and this sort of thing, feel free. I mean, obviously, once I get the Sigma game book done, I think that we're probably going to need to think about doing something on this as well. Just basically codifying everything in one place. It's all there already, obviously. In fact, Frank Tipton, the famous physicist from Tulane, has already written an introduction for it, which is pretty cool. So I just really need to get Sigma game done. So let's see here. What are the chances on a bindery documentary? Moderate. I don't think that the people that are involved in working there are too interested in attracting attention, but we can certainly, show some of the workings and that sort of thing. I think we'd like to get a little further along than we are. What is the first high volume book out of Castalia Bindery? That is going to be this one. That is, we've put pictures of it up, I think. And that would be the Cambridge History of the Byzantine Empire. And this was a real learning experience. We definitely learned some things that we should not do, which is, number one of which is, don't use expensive Spanish cowhide leather. And the reason is pretty simple. It's too thick and it's too uneven. It's very nice. They're going to be beautiful books. But man, they have, we really started with the high end of the learning curve. So this is the first book. All the cases have been made. And all for both volume 1 and volume 2. I don't think volume 2 has been stamped yet, but the cases have been made. I got a picture here somewhere. Let's see here. I thought I had them there. Wonder what I did with them. Maybe, let me check here. Well, I know I put them up on, let's see. No, not there either. So I'll take one more look around. There we go. Yeah, so here is, here's a picture of all of the volume 1 cases, all stamped, all ready to go. And yeah, I mean, they're beautiful books. You'll notice that we don't have any hubs on them because that was another problem with this leather. It can't take the hubs. It's a little too soft and spongy to really the hubs were just basically more like gentle suggestions, and it just wasn't worth it. I was disappointed, but you know, c'est la vie. They still look great. Let's see, I think I have another picture. Let's see. Yeah, this gives you a good look. So these are cases fresh off the stamp. And you can see that what we've done with history is instead of putting the logo up at the top of the spine, where it was kind of overpowering the spines, we've now put a blind stamp on the back. So, so if the book is lying face down, you can still identify it as a Castalia history book. And the other thing that's nice that you might not notice is that the stamping is very, very clean and crisp. I honestly prefer our stamp press to the one that BindTech has. I mean, they do good work, no question, but I prefer the one that we've got. I think that it actually, I don't know if it's, no, it can't be our designs because we do provide the designs to both. But for whatever reason, the stamps that we're seeing come out of the bindery are just really, really clean and really, really sharp. So, Terrence says, I'll miss the logo on the spine. Yeah, you won't though. I mean, it's too big and too dominant and it stands out too much on the shelf. If we had this book along with the other 3 or 4 that have it, the other 4 that have it, it would just be too much. Can we zoom in further? I don't really think so, but I'll try. Yeah, I guess we can. There's not really a good, it's not like John's system where he's got a pretty good zoom thing that goes. That's about the best we can do. But yeah, you can see that even with the blind stamp, you can read the Lego Ergo Schio on the logo, and on the Libraria, those stamps will actually, the rear is no longer going to be the same as the front. What we're going to do is we're going to have a gold stamped Libraria logo on the back. I think that'll look better. I've never been a huge fan of having the front and the back the same. It always, you're never sure which way, you're never sure which way the book is lying. So I think it'll be nice to have have an actual standard back for the different books. We'll probably do something similar for library. I haven't decided yet, but we'll see. Have to make up our minds soon. Actually, I don't think we are because I don't think we've put that on Dracula. We've already got the Dracula stamps ready. So anyhow, that's what's going on there. Actually, I'm wearing a Castalia history shirt right now. Now that I think about it, I do kind of like the cathedral ones where it just says cathedra on the front and it has this whole thing on the back. I think that that's actually generally a better look, but c'est la vie. Anyhow, that's all I've really got for tonight. So thanks for tuning in. If you haven't subscribed to Castalia Library, we should have a number of A Sea of Skulls Volume 1, A Sea of Skulls Volume 2, and Swiss Family Robinson available for sale. We'll probably have them put them up later this week. So thank you, sir, for taking that screenshot and bragging to my book friends. That's funny. All right, so that's what's going on. Spread the word about Mittens, and if you find anybody that comes up with a decent counter argument, please share it. By the way, Etherstar, I don't know if you missed it, but let's, in case you did, we'll go back and check. I thought I'd point out that I was showing this. These are your cases, and we will have your 12 books bound, and hopefully I'll get some pictures of them up tomorrow. So anyhow, happy to see some of the community already making use of the bindery, which is encouraging, and we will look forward to seeing you at the next Dark Stream. I'm Vox Day, and this is the Dark Stream.